Welcome to GIA Enrollment Insights Week Part 3, looking ahead, post-secondary capacity and demand. As we navigate the current enrollment challenges in the wake of the global pandemic, it's important not to lose sight of what post-secondary enrollment might look like 10 to 15 years down the road, resulting from substantial student success investments and reforms at each educational segment. If enrollment demand does rebound, what could that mean for post-secondary capacity in the region? The GIA research team built a simulation tool to better understand and prepare for potential increases in demand over time. To tell us more about that work is GIA's Director of Research, Dr. Sorrel Stielstra. Let's listen in.
Greetings. Thank you so much for joining me to hear about a project we've been working on to try to understand and anticipate what the region's needs for post-secondary education will be within the coming decade. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sorrel, and I'm the Director of Research at GIA. The idea for this project first originated when one of our board members wondered what the impact on local colleges and universities would be if every high school student in the IE took some dual enrollment courses, possibly even a full year's worth of credit. We haven't modeled that yet, but it did prompt us to think about current college enrollment and attainment and whether we could accommodate increased demand based on the success of current educational initiatives, as well as the desire to meet statewide and regional attainment goals. Before we talk about where we hope to get in the next 10 years, I also wanted to briefly review our current educational landscape. Of the 50 largest metro statistical areas in the US, the Inland Empire has the lowest educational attainment rate, with only 30% of the population having an AA degree or above, compared to 44% in California as a whole. We need to greatly increase our attainment if we want to meet the goal that Governor Newsom unveiled earlier this year of 70% of Californians attaining a certificate, AA or above, in the next 5 years. We know that college graduates have better economic outcomes than those without a degree. College graduates have far lower rates of poverty, lower rates of unemployment, and higher wages than other workers with less education. This is especially true in the face of increasing automation and during economic recessions, including COVID-19, which hit lower income workers the hardest. All of which is to suggest that college degrees have become increasingly valuable in California's labor market, and there is every reason to believe that these trends will continue in the future. Education undeniably improves the lives of individuals and their economic mobility. However, it's also a key tool in our regional efforts toward economic improvement in the Inland Empire as a whole. According to the PPIC, in 2030, California will fall 1 million college graduates short of economic demand, a problem they and others call the workforce skills gap. And when we consider not just BAs, but also career and technical associate degrees and certificates, California Competes, a nonprofit specializing in higher ed and workforce policy research, predicts a shortfall of well over 2 million workers. Even the potential arrival of highly educated workers from outside the state is unlikely to be large enough to fill this workforce skills gap. The gap in the IE in particular is estimated to be 60,000 for BAs and an additional 25,000 shortfall of workers with in-demand graduate degrees. It would behoove us to start planning now about how to address this workforce skills gap. At the same time as we have regional demand for workers to fill this workforce skills gap, we also have a lot of progress being made in preparing these future workers to be educated. And so before we talk about our model predicting post-secondary demand, I just want to remind people about the great work we are collectively doing to prepare students for college and beyond. As many of you well know, educators and other community leaders from across the region are working hard to improve the educational and labor market outcome of our residents. Looking at a handful of efforts and measures of educational success on this slide, we can see that the long-term trajectory of educational preparedness looks promising. Even acknowledging that the challenges of 2020 and beyond due to COVID have presented real setbacks, the extent of which are not currently yet fully understood, the trend of recent years shows progress across a range of measures, beginning with greater participation in preschool programs and increasing standardized test scores in grade school and middle school. Similarly, among high school students, we see steadily increasing graduation rates, along with completion of classes granting UC CSU eligibility, as well as increasing participation in college-level dual and concurrent enrollment courses while still in high school. Not only that, but there are initiatives underway to greatly increase the support to high school seniors to fill out the FAFSA form and learn how much financial aid they qualify for, which we know is a strong predictor of subsequent college enrollment. Many of you will be familiar with the recent landmark AB 705 legislation, which by maximizing student placement in transfer level rather than remedial coursework, offers the possibility of transforming student experiences and outcomes by freeing them from remedial ruts they can often get stuck in for years, adding time and cost to degree and transfer, and reducing the chance that they will ever successfully complete. Other promising initiatives at the community college level include the emphasis on associate degrees for transfer, the so-called degree with a guarantee, that offers community college students guaranteed admission to a Cal State with no more than 60 units, as well as the important work being done through the Guided Pathways Framework and the Vision for Success goals to improve student outcomes at California community colleges and close achievement gaps across student groups and regions across the state. One additional new local initiative that you may not be aware of yet is the College App opportunity. We have just launched a partnership with College App, a predictive analytics tool that can identify cohorts of specific individuals who are likely interested in furthering their education, and which will be used to identify prospective students in the service areas of local community colleges, so college partners can begin a targeted outreach program to inform these individuals about the opportunities for and the benefits of returning to school. We have to acknowledge, of course, that we are currently struggling with 2 years of worrisome declining enrollments at the community colleges, and we're not certain yet how or when this will resolve. However, the fact remains that using College App, we anticipate that nearly 1 in 4 adults in the Inland Empire, which is a huge number, has an intent to enroll in higher education in the next 2 years. And we now have the ability to reach out directly to these individuals who are likely to enroll, but may need some additional information and supports to do so successfully. In addition, projections from the state of California Department of Finance from June of this year project an increase in high school graduates in Riverside and San Bernardino counties of between 2,000 and 3,000 students by the year 2030. So all of this leads to the question that prompted us to begin this project in the first place. If regional education initiatives are as successful as we hope, what are the implications for our local colleges and universities in the coming years? To begin answering this question, we partnered with a brilliant graduate student at Claremont Graduate University named Manish Srivastava and built a tool that incorporates some of these factors and allows us to imagine possible future scenarios. This system dynamics methodology is used to model complex systems to formulate predictions based on key variables in the system. While not as common yet in the field of education, this methodology is widely applied in other social sciences, economics, and public health. Part of what excited Manish about working with us on this project was the opportunity to share with a wider audience the potential power of applying this methodology to educational questions. I want to emphasize that a key element and strength of the tool is that it can be calibrated and updated to continuously improve projections based on changing assumptions, new information, or evolving circumstances, which is helpful given the dynamic nature of our current reality. In fact, as I'll explain a little later, we initially built the model and then subsequently refined it several times through consultation and collaboration with regional stakeholders and partners. Moving forward, we welcome further discussion, collaboration, and input from other partners in the IE to continuously improve the accuracy of the projections. What you see here is a screenshot of the actual model of the interactive projection tool developed by the CGU graduate student. It uses the NetLogo software package, an open platform programmable modeling environment. I don't expect you to be able to see it in detail, and we'll look at a simplified version in a minute, but I just wanted to give you a feel for what the data in the simulation look like, as well as the tiny red sliders in each box that can adjust the ratios used in the model. Folks who want to learn more details about the tool and methods can contact me for further conversation, and we can include Manish as well and go into far more depth about the technical details. What we attempted to do is create a model that mirrors components of the IE's education system, showing the various post-secondary paths that high school students and adult learners can take. The data and variables used in the model are mostly publicly available from the US Census, the California Community College's Chancellor's Office, DataMart, and the California Department of Education downloadable data files. I say mostly because, as I'll explain in a minute, we ended up refining the model a tiny bit after sharing preliminary findings with partners in the region, and this required access to some data that are not publicly available. Okay, so here's a simplified version of the model. As you can see, it considers several student pipelines flowing from high school graduation. The first pipeline is comprised of high school graduates who are A to G ready and who enroll directly into a four-year degree program. The second pipeline combines high school graduates who are both A to G ready and not A to G ready, who attend community college, and then some of whom then transfer into a four-year program. Lastly, we have adult learners, defined as students aged 20 and above, who enroll into either a two-year or a four-year degree program. So now that you have a sense for the model, I want to share an overview of the three scenarios we created to predict possible college demand in the next 10 years. Our work builds on a report published by the College Futures Foundation in 2019 that lays the groundwork for understanding higher education capacity and demand challenges in the next decade using historical enrollment patterns for new college students and assuming incremental improvements in student academic preparation. Their report anticipates annual growth of around 10% of high school students being prepared to enter a BA program. In other words, A to G completion. Our project expands on this work by developing estimates of demand under several different scenarios, which are shown on this slide. The baseline scenario, the baseline model, uses current rates from the past couple of years of A to G completion in the IE. Current rates of transfer from local community colleges to four-year universities, which includes both the high school pipeline and the adult enrollments in community college, and current rates of adult learners enrollment for people seeking both two-year and four-year degrees. Note that the adult learner rates remain static in all scenarios, since we had no specific initiatives or policy reforms that would suggest plausible changes in rates to enter into the different scenarios. These could be modified if we're successful in reaching more adult learners through the College App platform that I mentioned earlier. The medium success model assumes that students in the IE achieve A to G rates comparable to students currently in the third quartile of California high school students, and community college students reach half of the California Community College Vision for Success transfer goal, which is a 35% increase in transfer to a UC or a CSU. The high success model assumes that that IE high school students reach the highest statewide rate of A to G completion, and that local community college students achieve the full Vision for Success transfer goal of 35% improvement. The different scenarios are somewhat arbitrary in the sense that there is not a correct ratio to include, but they're informed by good guesses based on current educational and policy initiatives and goals. I mentioned earlier that a strength of the tool is the fact that it can be modified. So I want to share a few examples of how the tool has evolved since we first created it. Shortly after we began building the tool, the pandemic hit. So based on previous research showing increasing enrollment patterns during economic recessions, we incorporated that element into the model. However, we observed that it turned out that the unemployment and enrollment patterns we anticipated based on prior economic recessions differed substantially from current real-life conditions. As many of you are aware, while economic downturns typically result in increases in post-secondary enrollment, the opposite has been true for enrollment in the wake of COVID-19, especially at two-year institutions. Because we're uncertain whether this pattern will persist or change course, COVID-19 related projections are not included in this model or report, but could be integrated in the future. A second modification we made had to do with some baseline numbers drawn from the College Futures Foundation report that I mentioned earlier that we use to inform our model. When sharing our preliminary results with college partners, they noticed that there were puzzlingly low estimates of community college enrollment in the model. And we realized that non-A to G ready high school grads had been incorrectly labeled as adult learners. And adult learners had been mistakenly omitted from the two-year enrollment information altogether, resulting in erroneously low estimates of community college students in their model. This correction substantially changed our findings by increasing our prediction of demand at regional community colleges. Lastly, and again, based on meeting with partners, we tweaked the model yet again to reflect college-going patterns of IE students. Our general premise was that the greater the academic performance of high school and community college students, the greater the demand would be placed on regional post-secondary institutions. However, universities in the IE tend to have lower exclusive application rates than some other public institutions in the state, and it's likely that increasing student success in the IE will produce greater demand from IE students for university seats outside of the region as well, which somewhat counterintuitively could actually temper local demand. To account for this possibility in our projections, we added a parameter using National Student Clearinghouse Student Tracker college-going data shared from the two county offices of education in the IE to add a parameter estimating student desire to attend university out of the area. This modification reduced by quite a bit the predicted demand for four-year seats in the Inland Empire from our original estimates. So at long last, what does our model predict? Shown in this figure is the total demand for new college seats, divided into two-year and four-year institutions in each of the three success scenarios. Based on the current post-secondary capacity in the IE and using the rates for each scenario that I described earlier, and of course, assuming enrollment trends return to normal following the COVID-19 crisis, our model suggests that by 2030, Inland Empire colleges and universities may not have enough seats for between 15 and 25,000 students seeking a four-year degree and 7,000 to 14,000 students seeking a two-year degree. While fully reaching the high success model and the highest demand may be unrealistic, still with an increased emphasis in recent years on high school A to G courses and community college transfer readiness, college eligibility and demand at local universities will steadily climb over the next decade. If maximally effective, these educational reforms may increase the demand for higher education in the Inland Empire to levels even greater than previously anticipated. There may also be additional unanticipated future demand for higher education among individuals who have lost jobs due to COVID, once transmission of the virus has been controlled. Despite this need, prior to the pandemic, Cal State San Bernardino, the region's top destination for students pursuing a bachelor's degree, was already impacted, receiving more applications from qualified freshmen and transfer students than can be admitted, including within areas of great regional need, such as healthcare fields like nursing. Without intervention, this disparity between applications and slots will almost certainly keep widening. In closing, I want to remind everyone that the problem of impacted public universities in California is not new. Even as public education reforms have successfully prepared more students for college over the past quarter century, the CSU-UC systems have turned away an increasing number of students due to lack of funding, enrollment caps stipulated in California's master plan, and limited space, resulting in many tens of thousands of qualified students being denied access to higher education. According to the College Futures Foundation, in 2018 alone, 73,000 eligible students were turned away from the CSU and UC systems, and a growing number of California's high school graduates are leaving the state to attend college elsewhere, a brain drain the Inland Empire can ill afford. Notably, the impacts of these capacity constraints are not felt uniformly across the state, with regions most in need of increasing their population's educational attainment, such as the IE, facing the greatest gap between supply and demand. The Inland Empire has 13% of California's high school seniors, but only 7% of total seats available across community college, UC-CSU, and independent private colleges. Recent studies commissioned to examine the demand for and feasibility of a new campus in the CSU-UC systems have found that projected enrollments alone do not warrant the construction of new campuses, particularly in light of the expenses entailed in building a new site. These studies conclude that increased future enrollment growth can be accommodated at both the CSU and UC systems through current long-range plans and by more efficient use of existing facilities, including increasing summer enrollments and evening weekday classes, reducing non-California admissions, and expanding online coursework. Online learning had been growing in recent years prior to COVID-19, and this has accelerated tremendously in the past year and a half as most California colleges and universities transitioned to online learning during the pandemic. The further expansion of remote instruction offers one potential solution for increasing access. But even without capital expenditures for land or buildings, ensuring we have sufficient instructors, advisors, and other support staff will be challenging, given that salaries and benefits represent the greatest expenditures per student. Additionally, expanding online coursework would entail considerable investments in course development, professional development, and technological capacity. Great care will also need to be taken to ensure that learning outcomes continue to show improvements and that online instruction does not widen equity gaps for racialized minority, first generation, or Pell Grant students. These investments in strengthening online instruction might have even more far-reaching impacts not built into the models in this report, if improvements also facilitate the return of some of the nearly 25% of the Inland Empire adults who have attained some college but no degree. The IE may not fully attain the college readiness and transfer success rates in our high success model, or this attainment may be delayed due to the lingering effects of COVID-19. However, given the wide-ranging efforts across the region supporting A to G coursework, dual enrollment, FAFSA completion, the elimination of remediation, and increasing ADTs, the projections outlined in this paper are within the realm of possibility within 10 years and present an urgent call to action. Meeting the educational needs of students in a region comprised of 2/3 people of color and majority Latinx, and where many families struggle with poverty and a dearth of living wage jobs, presents a critical issue of equity. The fact remains that whether done through expansion of physical space or operational capacity or some combination of the two, if we want to develop a well-trained workforce able to attract a more diverse industry base to balance out the disproportionately high percentage of low-paying and at-risk occupations, it is imperative that we start planning how to provide improved college access in the Inland Empire. Industries seeking to expand or relocate to new regions assess a number of factors, and the skill level of the local talent is an important consideration. The Inland Empire has shown itself to be open to and capable of innovation across all 12 community colleges, both public universities, bi-county K-12 public school districts and counties, and a network of support organizations working together toward educational systems reform. The long-term economic prospects and vitality of the IE, as well as the entire state, require us to start planning now how to address this shortfall. Stay tuned for future conversations where regional stakeholders gather to discuss these ideas and possible plans in more depth. And please, again, reach out if you'd like to get involved or learn more. Thank you so much.